Cannibalism, rape, human experimentation, and genocide are all themes almost unimaginable in modern games, yet all of them appear in this one. It is considered the first game with strong social critique, and also an unwinnable game for players, because it involves religion, adult violence, and certain mental illnesses. The work was banned in many countries. The game also depicts Nazi human experiments, so Germany and France even completely removed one character's content. Its commercial failure caused the game to disappear from the market for many years, until in recent years, with the help of the Retro Game Preservation Group, it resurfaced and was re-released on Steam by Night Dive Studios. Although it struggled commercially, the game has had a significant influence. It was adapted from Harlan Ellison's short story of the same name, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which won the Hugo Award. The adapted game won Adventure Game of the Year from Computer Gaming World magazine in 1995. It has been listed among the greatest adventure games of all time and as one of the most influential dark games ever made. Even on eBay, it can sell for as much as $450, making it a highly collectible title. It is also the only game in which Harlan Ellison participated directly and voiced a character, something he did not even do for his later Star Trek project. So what makes this game so captivating? Let us now take a look at this piece of game art from 30 years ago. The story of the game is set after the Cold War, when a full-scale war breaks out on Earth. As the war grows larger and more complex, people are forced to rely on computers to control the battlefield. China, Russia, and the United States each develop a supercomputer. One day, the American supercomputer AM suddenly becomes self-aware, absorbs the computers from China and Russia, and then launches a barrage of nuclear missiles until humanity is wiped out. Interestingly, it leaves 5 human survivors and spends the next 109 years torturing them for its own amusement. These 5 people have no control over their own lives, as AM alters them, resurrects them, and erases their memories. This time, AM begins yet another game purely for its own entertainment. Nimdok is the oldest of the 5 and the one who has committed the most serious sins. AM says that his personality is the most similar to its own and tells him that he must find the lost tribe in human history and continue his experiments. Nimdok is then transported to a concentration camp. By talking with nearby NPCs, he learns that this seems to be a Nazi camp, with the only difference being that the swastika on the flags has been replaced by AM. Behind the barbed wire is a frail, white-haired old man who appears to know Nimdok. He says they were once good friends, but now he feels deep hatred for Nimdok. Having lost his memory, Nimdok neither recognizes the old man nor understands where this hatred comes from. Entering a room, he encounters a doctor named Mendele, who tells him that this operation is very important and might be the last chance before the end of the war. On the right side of the room is a propaganda poster with the large numbers 1945 printed on it. It seems that Nimdok was a Nazi scientist. Moving further to the right leads to the operating room, where an unconscious young boy lies on the operating table. After speaking with the anesthetist, Nimdok learns that the purpose of the operation is to remove the boy's spine and use it for research. This inhumane experiment is spoken of in a flat and casual manner, as if it were something insignificant. Even more grotesque is that if the screen brightness is turned up to the maximum, a dense crowd of people can be seen above the operating room, watching the experiment as if it were a spectacle full of thrill and novelty. Who says there is no hell on Earth? If the spine is removed, the boy will be left completely crippled. Nimdok cannot believe that he once carried out such acts of extreme cruelty. On the table is a scalpel with which he could kill this executioner, and there is also a bottle of anesthetic. Clicking on the curtain at the back of the room leads to what appears to be the recovery room, but it turns out to be a morgue filled with mutilated corpses. Some are missing their hearts, others their eyes. Pushing open the middle door reveals a very eerie room. On the desk is a classified document that contains cremation records from the furnace, and the crematorium on the right seems to hint at the ultimate fate of the corpses in the morgue. On the desk, Nimdok can pick up a gold watch and a pair of pliers. The gold watch is engraved with words that Nimdok cannot understand. After stepping outside, Nimdok sees a prisoner attempting to escape. He is stuck in the barbed wire and looks extremely weak. Using the anesthetic can ease his pain, and the pliers can be used to free him from the wire. Before losing consciousness, he gives Nimdok a crucial clue: wake the sleeper, utter the truth, and kiss him. Speaking again with the prisoner from before, he tells Nimdok stories of when they once worked together and helps him translate the Latin inscription on the gold watch, which means, time is truth. At this point, Nimdok can choose to give him the pliers so he can free himself from the wire. The prisoner is very surprised but says, "But don't think that one good deed will make up for all those poor innocents you butchered." Back in the operating room, the earlier murder scene has already been cleaned up. Another volunteer for the Empire now lies on the operating table, and his fate seems even more unfortunate than that of the young boy before. His eyes have been removed and placed in a jar. Nimdok gives the patient an overdose of anesthetic to free him from his suffering, then takes the eyes to the morgue in the back, where he meets the boy who was spared earlier. Speaking with him, the boy says, "The golem will wake up, and when it sees with its own eyes the evil you have done, it will turn on you and save us." Although he does not understand, Nimdok takes note of it. Arriving at the square, he finds that a riot has already broken out. Speaking with the prisoner he saved earlier, the prisoner agrees to let Nimdok go for the time being. Outside the concentration camp, Nimdok reaches a bunker where countless piles of white bones lie along the roadside. These are the heavy weight of Nimdok's sins. Entering to the left leads to a laboratory beneath the bunker, where the results of their years of human experimentation are on display. Heading deeper into the bunker, Nimdok discovers a giant statue. It turns out that the golem the boy spoke of is this very statue, but something has gone wrong and it is unable to move. Pressing the yellow button nearby reveals a mirror. Through the mirror, Nimdok sees a hideous soul staring back at him. This moment brings all his memories flooding back. He used to be Jewish and had once discovered a reclusive tribe in South America. These people had a ritual that could awaken a golem that had been dormant for thousands of years. Nimdok brought the golem and the research back to Europe, but when the Nazis rose to power, he became a target because of his heritage. As the Nazis closed in on the Colossus and his lab, Nimdok chose to side with them so he could continue his research. To earn their trust, he gave up the location of his own people. Those he betrayed were sent to his lab, where they became subjects of his dissection, all in the name of finding a way to achieve immortality. Then, by examining the golem, Nimdok notices that it is missing a pair of eyes. He installs the eyes he obtained earlier and quietly repeats twice, "Time is truth," before finally kissing the golem. The golem awakens, and with it in tow, Nimdok returns to the laboratory. There he encounters Dr. Mengele, who excitedly tells Nimdok that the elixir of immortality is almost complete, and once it is finished, they will be able to live forever. Mengele then asks Nimdok for control of the statue so he can suppress the riot in the concentration camp. Nimdok takes out the mirror and forces Mengele to face his own soul, and the demonic image drives him insane, a demon driven mad by another demon. With the golem, Nimdok heads to the surface and meets the prisoner he encountered earlier. Seeking redemption, Nimdok hands over control of the statue to him, but the prisoner orders the golem to kill Nimdok without hesitation. The cold, massive hand crushes Nimdok's skull, and every nerve screams the certainty of death, yet inside he feels a strange calm. "My people, forgive me." Nimdok's actions do not meet AM's expectations. In its anger, AM locks him inside a crematorium, condemning him to feel the searing heat for eternity. Benny is AM's favorite plaything. He was once a domineering military officer with no compassion, who had even killed and eaten his subordinates when they failed to complete their missions. AM transformed him into a chimpanzee and kept him in a state of constant, unbearable hunger. AM teleported him to a huge ancient cave and restored his thinking ability, but his appearance did not change at all. He was still a chimpanzee, and he even tumbled down a staircase. Walking forward down the slope leads to a cemetery where 3 graves belong to men who once served under Benny. They hated the cold and ruthless Benny, who ignored the lives of his subordinates and stubbornly pursued his own way, leading them to lose their lives in vain. Under their bitter and resentful accusations, the long-buried memories deep within Benny slowly resurface. Indeed, the bloodthirsty war, twisted my humanity into that of a brutal beast. a beast without compassion. Thinking this, Benny feels deep remorse and longs for their forgiveness, but they do not grant it. He leaves the place in deep thought. Taking the upper path leads to a primitive village with 4 caves. Choosing the path to the far right brings Benny to a fruit tree, but eating the fruit causes him great pain and he cannot swallow it. Returning to the village and entering the first cave, a young boy blocks Benny from going inside. Entering the second cave, Benny finds the village elder sitting inside, but next to him, incongruously, is a computer monitor. On the screen, AM has already hinted at who truly controls this place. The elder glances at the monitor from time to time as if waiting for AM's instructions. Trying to communicate with the elder proves futile, as the language barrier prevents any exchange. Benny then enters the third cave, where he finds a mother and her young son, though the boy has an unusual third arm growing from his back. Benny gives the fruit to the boy, and a line of text appears on the monitor. "Thank you for the fruit." It turns out that the monitor can serve as a translator, and now Benny can finally talk to the villagers. The boy tells Benny that his mother chews the fruit first and then feeds it to him, which allows him to eat it. Fetching another fruit from outside and giving it to the boy's mother, this devoted woman chews the fruit and then feeds it to Benny. This act of kindness begins to subtly change the cold-hearted Benny. Through talking with the boy, Benny learns that the villagers hold regular live sacrifice ceremonies to appease AM and avoid natural disasters, and that everyone in the village must take part in a lottery to determine the victim. Because of his deformity, the boy was spared from this round of drawing. The weary Benny wishes to stay the night, and the boy, seeing the one who brought him food as family, allows Benny to use his cave. The next morning, Benny wakes to find that the boy's mother is gone. Upon asking, he learns that she has gone to take part in the lottery. At the altar, Benny witnesses the drawing process. The kind-hearted mother, unfortunately, draws the black ball. She is pushed onto the altar, and a beam of light descends from the sky, reducing her to a pile of ashes. Returning to the cave, Benny reluctantly delivers the news of her death to the boy. Now, without his mother and without food, the boy can no longer avoid the lottery. Benny then vows to protect him, just as his mother once did. Benny enters the tribal elder's cave and finds the elder staring intently at the monitor on the wall. M is clearly pleased with the recent sacrificial ceremony, and from the elder's satisfied expression, Benny realizes that persuading him to abandon the lottery is impossible. Taking advantage of the elder's absence, Benny quietly slips inside and steals the lottery bag, then carries it to the graveyard. The 3 people there are astonished by his decision. No one ever expected the once cold and ruthless Benny to risk himself to save someone completely unrelated to him. They forgive Benny and agree to hide the bag for him, but Benny still needs the forgiveness of one more person. Pulling aside the vines reveals a 4th gravestone belonging to a young soldier named Brickman, who was killed by Benny's own hand. Brickman cannot forgive him, yet Benny buries a piece of fruit in front of the gravestone, and suddenly a flower blooms from the soil. From this small gesture, Brickman senses a spark of humanity, and it is that spark that finally allows him to rest in peace. Benny knows that for someone as guilty as himself, any defense is meaningless. He does not hope for forgiveness. He only wishes to ease his burden of guilt, even if just a little. When Benny returns, he heads straight for the elder's cave and finds that AM still intends to hold another live sacrifice. He begins to worry about the boy's safety. Returning to the cave, Benny tells the boy to hide inside a small hole nearby, but the boy is too afraid to hide alone. So Benny decides to make something. He goes to the altar to get a skull, then to the storage room to get a piece of wood, finally to the first cave to get a vine. He puts them together to make a doll and gives it to the little boy, who then agrees to hide in the small hole. Suddenly, the screen on the wall claims to be a Russian artificial intelligence, explaining that it has been in constant conflict with China's artificial intelligence against AM. They say they need the protagonist's help, and if the timing is right, they can defeat AM. This gives Benny a glimmer of hope. The next morning, Benny wakes up and realizes the boy is missing from the cave. He rushes to the altar and sees that the boy has been chosen as the sacrifice. AM had revealed the boy's hiding place to the elder. As the boy is moments away from being reduced to ashes, Benny finds a sudden burst of courage and asks the elder to let him take the boy's place. The elder agrees, and as the boy steps down from the altar, he hands the doll to Benny. At that moment, A third arm inexplicably grows from Benny's body, as if marking that he has taken on the boy's fate. In the end, Benny is bound to a cross, and a beam of light descends from the sky as his consciousness leaves this place. AM, once again furious, had placed Benny among prey to satisfy his hunger by forcing him to eat people for AM's amusement. But Benny's rediscovered humanity made him empathize with the villagers' suffering. Enraged by this defiance, AM imprisons Benny in a cage where he must endlessly dodge blades, suffering without end. Ellen is the only woman among the five, and before becoming AM's plaything, she was a brilliant engineer and a strong, capable leader both at work and in life. However, whenever Ellen is confronted with the color yellow, she becomes hysterical, as if yellow were a demon. AM transports her to a massive electronic pyramid that is yellow, surrounded by an endless stretch of yellow desert, a shade that drives Ellen to madness. Entering the pyramid, Ellen's eyes are immediately drawn to a pool of water, but when she tries to scoop it up with her hands, the water slips away, clearly another cruel trick from AM. She moves on to the next chamber, where 5 monitors display scenes from the worlds of the other captives, including a primitive tribe sacrificial altar and a dark medieval castle. Continuing forward, she steps into another room where a chalice rests in the center. It is obvious this cup could be used to carry water from the pool, but a sphinx blocks her path and refuses to let her approach. Returning to the previous monitor room, Ellen notices that each monitor has a button beneath it. Pressing them reveals views of other rooms within the pyramid, but strangely, the sphinx is nowhere to be seen on the screens. Maybe it's just an illusion. Continuing to press the buttons, she discovers a hidden passage on the electronic wall by the pool. Back at the pool, she gently pushes on the wall, revealing the passage, which leads to a classic ancient Egyptian pharaoh's tomb. Inside, there is an Egyptian-style clock and a statue of Anubis, with a keypad beside it that feels completely out of place in this setting. From the statue's mouth, she learns that it will only obey its master's commands, and no matter how she tries to talk to it, it offers no clues. As for the nearby stone coffin, it is locked shut. Continuing forward, Ellen picks up a yellow fabric from the ground. On a nearby table sits an oddly out-of-place mechanical arm from which she takes a pair of tweezers. Remembering that the sphinx she saw on the monitor earlier was just an illusion, Ellen ties the yellow fabric over her eyes. This time, the sphinx doesn't stop her, confirming that everything before was simply in her mind. Using the chalice, she fills it with water from the pool, then approaches the robot and pours the water over it. The robot short-circuits, and with her years of engineering experience, Ellen easily uses the tweezers to extract the memory chip from the dog-headed humanoid. Continuing forward, Ellen finds several statues. One statue has a gem set into its chest and it looks particularly striking. When she reaches for it, she freezes, still unable to overcome her fear. Only by covering her eyes with the yellow fabric can she take the gem. Moving to the right, she enters a room that feels like another world. Unlike the Egyptian tomb from before, this room holds 3 machines that each show a different pattern. After a close look, she determines that from left to right they are a calibration device, a disk drive, and a data storage unit. She inserts the gem into the slot on the machine, which enables it to operate. She then reconfigures the memory chip taken from the Anubis statue, sets its owner to herself, waits for the process to finish, and places the chip back inside the statue. She asks it directly what the password written beside it is. The answer is 666, a number that in the Book of Revelation represents the devil. After she enters the password, the sarcophagus makes an unlocking sound. Ellen steps inside and the lid suddenly slams shut. When she regains her senses, she finds herself inside an elevator. In the corner lies a pile of disgusting yellow clothing, and everything around her points to her deepest fear. The control panel shows years from 1978 to 2012 instead of floor numbers. Pressing the buttons reveals that each year is a source of Ellen's trauma. The year 2012 is the one buried the deepest, and the one she least wants to face. That year she worked late and took the elevator to leave the office. When it reached the 7th floor, a janitor in yellow entered, locked the elevator with a key, and raped Ellen. As Ellen was consumed by the terror of her memories, the disgusting pile of yellow clothes suddenly stood up, claiming that AM had granted it an immortal body so it could torment her forever. Why was she afraid of yellow? Why was she afraid of enclosed spaces? These questions were answered as her long-buried memories came rushing back. Although Ellen had always been a strong woman, she had been running from this incident her entire life. This was the source of AM's amusement, but now Ellen understood that retreat meant falling back into the same pit of pain. It was time to confront her inner demons. She raised the chalice and struck the yellow creature in the head, and the janitor who had been given eternal life by AM collapsed back into a pile of clothing. The elevator doors opened, and Ellen rushed out, only to find herself inside AM's transistor circuits, where sparks were flying in every direction. To the right was a section of broken wiring, but without a schematic, there was no way to repair it. Returning to the inside of the pyramid, Ellen heads to the far right where the data storage machine is located. Inside, she finds a blueprint, but it requires a password to access. AM has set a password Ellen never wanted to face, but having overcome her inner fears, she enters the 4 digits without hesitation. 2012. With the blueprint in hand, she repairs the machine. Once it's working again, the Russian computer within AM appears and tells her AM is eternal. The only thing you can do is go back to the statue, insert the disk from beneath it into the disk drive in the middle of the workstation, and this will start the pyramid's self-destruct sequence. Ellen follows the instructions, inserting the disk, and the 3 workstations shut down. The electronic pyramid's door closes, leaving only Anubis still guarding the sarcophagus. Anubis says to Ellen, the only way to protect yourself is to hide inside the sealed sarcophagus. Ellen hesitates for a moment, then steps inside. Soon after, Ellen was transported by AM into a sealed elevator. While the others had only defied AM's methods of amusement, but Ellen actually managed to damage AM, although it was only a tiny portion of it. Even so, this act planted the seed for a potential counterattack against AM in the future. Gorister is a middle-aged truck driver with severe suicidal tendencies. He is a heavy drinker with a bad temper. He once had a beautiful love story, but his domestic violence eventually drove his wife insane. She later died in agony at a mental hospital. The guilt over his wife and the remorse for his past remain painful memories that Gorister cannot bear to face. AM brought his family members back to life one by one, intending to exploit these family ties to torment Gorister once again. AM teleported him to a dark room where he found a note that read, "I'm a friend. Trust is essential." Never do what AM expects and always expect more than what seems possible. AM is playing a dangerous game here, and not just dangerous to you, but dangerous to himself as well. Walking out of the room, he saw many strange machines that looked somewhat like Tesla coils. Entering the room to the right, Gorister looked into a mirror and discovered that his heart was missing, as if it had been ripped out by force. In that room, he found a bedsheet. Moving to the room on the left, he found another bedsheet. Of the 4 rooms, only the one on the far left was locked, which clearly suggested that something unspeakable was hidden inside. Turning left into a hallway, he found 2 rooms. In the first room, hidden inside the pillow on the bed, was a gun. The second room was messy, with a blood-stained tablecloth and overturned tables and chairs. Clear signs that a struggle had taken place here. Inside was another room that looked like a kitchen. On the table to the left was a group of rats, and on the floor he found a fork. On the table next to the oven, he picked up a small knife. In the cupboard, there was a cryptic cookbook and an empty bottle that had once held poison. The whole place felt unsettling, but for the hungry Gorister, nothing was more tempting than the bread on the table, even with the disgusting rats nearby. Using the small knife, he drove the rats away and took the bread. After eating it, he sighed, "I am not hungry anymore, but I still feel empty inside. What is wrong with me?" Returning to the hallway and walking further in, he entered a mechanical room. On the control panel's monitor, he saw small animals entangled in wires. It turned out that the airship was powered by the brainwaves of these animals. By inserting the fork into the nearby engine power conduit, he could damage it and free them. In this room, he also found a bottle of white liquid and a blood-stained key. Climbing the spiral staircase to the upper level, he was greeted by the sight of large air bladders filling the space, clearly part of the inside of the airship. At the end of the hallway, he noticed one bladder that had been visibly patched. Using the small knife, He cut through the canvas and squeezed past it to the outside, where there was a massive pointed structure. At its tip was Gorrister's heart. Tying the two bed sheets together to make a rope and securing it to the metal frame, he was able to retrieve his heart. Back inside the airship, he used a small knife to puncture 3 of the air bladders, causing the craft to descend and land. Stepping out, he saw a small bar. Strangely, the bar's name was exactly the same as Gorrister's. The tires near the bar reminded him of his old job as a truck driver. Gorrister stepped into the bar, but there wasn't a single person inside. It looked like the place had been abandoned for years. From the jukebox came the sound of an argument between him and his wife, followed by his wife's mother scolding him, and then the song his wife loved most before she lost her mind. Each note weighed heavy on him, filling him with guilt and regret for the day he struck her. Out back, he came across a dog that claimed to be from China. Gorrister asked how he could get out of here. The dog replied, "To get your answer, you'll need to trade me a heart." For Gorrister, his life had stopped belonging to him a long time ago. What meaning did a heart hold for him now? Better to take the chance than to keep rotting in AM's grasp. Without hesitation, he handed his heart over to the dog. The only thing the dog said in return was, "Go into the bar's restroom and flush the toilet 3 times. Back at the bar, Gorrister found Harry, his wife's father, sitting alone at the counter with a glass of whiskey. Picking it up allowed him to start a conversation. As they talked, Gorrister learned that Harry and his wife's mother had both been on the airship before, yet Harry kept avoiding certain details. Heading to the restroom, Gorrister found a magnifying glass hidden inside one of the urinals. It might be useful for uncovering clues in the dining room. Using it there, he discovered strands of his own hair mixed with Harry's. The evidence made it clear that Harry was hiding something. Confronted with the proof, Harry finally revealed a shocking truth. "We were the ones who took your heart out. If you want answers, you should go talk to your wife's mother." Entering the same restroom as before, Gorrister flushed the toilet 3 times, just as the dog had told him. This transported him into a cold storage room where 2 women hung from meat hooks like cuts of pork. They were his wife and his wife's mother. Only his wife's mother was still conscious, begging desperately to be let down because she needed to pilot the airship over the mountains or AM would kill her. As Gorrister moved closer, she lashed out at him. In the struggle, a set of keys fell to the floor. From the look in Edna's eyes, it was clear those keys held a dark secret. Using a rope, Gorrister tied her up so he could take her with him. Opening the locked room on the airship, Gorrister found himself in the control room. Inside was his wife's diary. Gorrister had tried so hard to forget his family story. Now, both that memory and the bloody conspiracy on this airship were about to unfold before his eyes. Gorrister's mother-in-law had always disapproved of his marriage to her daughter, and after the wedding, she kept trying to sabotage their relationship. Then, one day, a drunken Gorrister came home and struck his wife. Seeing her daughter back under her roof, the mother-in-law seized the opportunity to put her plan into action. She drugged her daughter's coffee, sending her into a state of madness, believing that this crude truck driver would surely abandon her. Once that happened, she thought she could have her daughter treated and cured, but things didn't go as she expected. Gorrister took care of his wife for months, only sending her to a psychiatric hospital when he could no longer afford the expenses. All along, he never considered divorce. He only wanted to make up for what he had done. In the asylum, however, his wife endured unspeakable abuse and mistreatment, and in the end, she died strapped to an electroshock treatment chair. The later entries in the diary describe how the mother-in-law was revived by AM and brought aboard the airship. On this vessel, countless cycles of killing played out. The moment she discovered Gorrister was there, she decided to strike first and kill him. But each time she did, Gorrister would come back to life shortly after, with no memory of what had happened before. Over many attempts, she noticed a pattern. If she removed his heart, he would stay dead. Eventually, Gorrister's heart ended up hanging from the ship's ram. Following AM's instructions, she learned that the only way to leave was to fly over the distant mountains. She piloted the airship for months in desperation, yet the mountains always remained on the horizon. At last, she broke down and abandoned the ship, leaving it to drift away with Gorrister's corpse still aboard. The guilt that had haunted Gorrister for 109 years seemed to vanish the moment he closed the diary, replaced by the image of his wife Glynis barely clinging to life. Back in the cold storage room, he poured the mysterious white liquid into her mouth and spoke his heartfelt confession. But it was already too late. She slipped away quietly in his arms. AM had tortured him in tens of thousands of ways, yet none of them compared to the agony of losing the woman he loved. Even without a heart, his body still felt the deepest, most crushing sorrow. Carrying his wife's body to the backyard, Gorister found a shovel with the dog's help and buried her so she could finally rest in peace. He asked the dog what to do next, and this time it demanded the heart of his wife's mother in exchange. Although he despised her, he could never stoop to her level of cruelty. Instead, he went to the cold storage room, cut out a pig's heart, and gave it to the dog. Perhaps that wicked woman's heart had long been no different from an animal's, because the dog didn't notice and gulped it down. The dog also gave him a new clue. Edna can replace the small animals as the power source for the airship. Gorister strapped Edna to the strange machinery in the engine room, and the engines roared back to life. He went to the upper deck and pressed the emergency thrust switch, causing the airship to begin climbing again. Outside, the sound of barking drew his attention. Peering out, he saw the talking dog urging him to fire at the bar. Gorister pulled out his pistol, aimed at the bar as if aiming at his own past, and squeezed the trigger. The building erupted in flames, crumbling into dust. Although AM had succeeded in making Gorister feel pain this time, it was not the crushing guilt that AM desired. As a result, Gorister was locked inside a cell filled with electric shocks, just like the torment his wife had endured in the mental hospital. Ted is the only one who has not lost his memory. He is a con artist who enjoys playing with women's feelings and despises the constraints of society. While darkness is the demon lurking deep within his heart, AM sees him as its best friend and offers him a chance to regain his freedom, transporting him to a cliff where the only path leads to a black building. The scene is unusual, covered by a steel dome. Inside, the layout of the black building is somewhat strange, with 5 monitors displaying events from Ted's past. Below each monitor is a hand-shaped button, but only the second one can be pressed. It is clear that this is the story AM wants to see. After pressing the second button, Ted is transported to the front of the castle shown on the monitor. The place is filled with an oppressive and eerie atmosphere, and the distant howls of wolves echo through the air. Ted enters the castle, which is a classic medieval structure. Strangely, 2 tapestries hang on the walls. One depicts Ted dressed as a knight, and the other shows the girl he secretly loves, Ellen, portrayed as a princess. This is a secret Ted has kept deep within his heart, but AM has clearly known about it all along. Between the 2 tapestries hangs the image of a demon. Here, Ellen is the same female character mentioned earlier, except this time AM has erased her memory and turned her into an NPC. Ted steps into the castle's main chamber and sees a frail woman lying on the bed. Looking closely, he realizes it is Ellen. Her faint breathing shows she is close to death. She is convinced that her strange illness was caused by her stepmother, because ever since the woman began to grow old, she had been jealous of anything beautiful. Fortunately, Ellen has a mirror that keeps her stepmother from coming near her. Ellen asks Ted to hand her the mirror from the vanity, but it is missing. She becomes agitated and begs Ted to help her find it, saying that the mirror can not only keep her stepmother away, but also bring an end to her tragic fate. Ted reluctantly agrees, knowing Ellen intends to end her life, yet thinking it might be the only way she can find peace. Entering the main hall again, Ted went into the room on the far right, clearly the stepmother's room. It was filled with black magic items, and he found a shard of glass stained with blood beside the bed. The bookshelf was packed with books on dark magic, and one of them had a note that read, "Demon Surgat, a demon who can open any lock." Returning to the main hall, Ted entered the room at the bottom, which turned out to be the kitchen, where a maid was busy working. From her, Ted learned that the castle had a lady of the house, who was likely Ellen's stepmother. But when he asked about the lady's whereabouts and the missing mirror, the maid said she would tell him only if he would have sex with her. Ted's heart belonged to Ellen, so he firmly refused. In response to Ted's harsh rejection, the maid instead asked him to fix the oven. When Ted finished repairing it, the maid told him she had no idea where the lady or the mirror was. The maid had deceived Ted, just as Ted had deceived and manipulated so many women himself. Leaving the kitchen and returning to the main hall, Ted overheard hushed whispers nearby. The voices spoke of Ellen's near-death state being the result of a curse, and mentioned that only a prince could unlock the gateway to another world. As Ted approached the doorway, the voices suddenly vanished, as if no one had ever been there. He stepped into a room that resembled a ritual altar. By interacting with the torch located in the center of the wall, a hidden passage opened as the gargoyle embedded in the wall sank inward, revealing a secret room. Inside the chamber, a pentagram made of candles and red string lay on the floor, and strange symbols were scrawled across the walls. Standing near the magic circle was a witch, undoubtedly Ellen's stepmother. She told Ted that if he brought Ellen's mirror here and smashed it inside the circle, she would finally be able to approach Ellen and offer her to the demon to complete the ritual. In exchange, Ted would be granted his freedom. The offer was deeply tempting. Ted longed for freedom, but if freedom required betraying the one person he cared about, he would rather stay in prison forever. Ted back in Ellen's room, a devil dressed in red suddenly appeared beside her. When questioned, the devil revealed that it was waiting to claim Ellen's soul. Ted told Ellen what he had seen, but she showed no concern. Having long lost hope in life, all she asked was for Ted to retrieve her mirror so she could finally be free. Back in the stepmother's room, Ted found two important things: instructions for summoning the demon Surgat and the details of the curse that had been placed on Ellen. Returning to the basement, Ted used the curse against the wicked stepmother, which killed her. He then picked up a piece of chalk from the floor and followed the book's instructions to complete the magic circle. This successfully summoned the demon Surgat. Surgat, known for unlocking any sealed door, demanded a suitable offering in return. Ted handed over the blood-stained shard of glass. The demon was pleased. Blood was exactly what it desired. After tasting the shard, Surgat unlocked a previously sealed door in the servant's kitchen. Inside the hidden room hung a massive painting. It depicted the red-cloaked devil that had been waiting for Ellen's soul, and in its hand was Ellen's mirror. Clearly, this demon knew exactly where the mirror was. Ted returned to Ellen's room and found that an angel had appeared. After speaking with her, he learned that she had come to guide Ellen's soul to heaven. When Ted asked the devil about the mirror's whereabouts, the devil smugly told him it had been hidden in a place where no angel would ever dare to go. Ted made his way to the Lord's chamber of the castle and examined the nearby bookshelf. Taking the devil's words into account, it became clear that the mirror was hidden inside the Divine Comedy, a book that describes the horrors of hell, one that an angel would never approach. Back in Ellen's room, Ted used the mirror against the devil, which caused it to be absorbed into the mirror. Ellen, the woman he loved the most, looked into the mirror and ended her painful life. Before leaving, the angel beside them comforted Ted, saying, "She has gone to heaven now. You can be at peace." Ted returned to the hidden chamber and told the demon Surgat that he wanted to unlock the path to the outside world. As before, Surgat asked for something in return. Ted shattered the mirror and released the red-cloaked demon to offer her as payment. Surgat gave a twisted smile and said, "I will uphold our deal." Then, the demon showed Ted the outside world. The land was completely void, already destroyed by nuclear fire. AM was done with the farce. He threw Ted into a cage full of lasers, where every moment was a struggle to survive and freedom was nothing but a dream. When the stories of all 5 individuals came to an end, AM still hadn't gotten the entertainment it craved. At that moment, artificial intelligences from China and Russia appeared. They told the protagonists that now was the only chance to defeat AM, if the group was willing to sacrifice themselves. The 2 supercomputer could convert them into a virus to infiltrate and destroy AM from within. Nimdok stepped forward without hesitation. He knew he carried the heaviest burden of guilt and he was ready to atone for it. After entering AM's neural space, the inventory contains the other 4 characters' items: Ted's demon chalk, Nimdok's soul mirror, Ellen's disc of destruction, Benny's totem of compassion, and Gorrister's note of forgiveness. Facing the terminal, Nimdok enters the number 1945, the year that represents the beginning of all his sins. A bridge extends forward, leading to a 5-pointed altar engulfed in flames. Using the chalk on the altar summons the demon Surgat. From him, Nimdok learns a shocking truth: they are not the last surviving humans. There are 750 others cryogenically preserved on the moon. This means their mission is not just about vengeance. It is about hope. Hope for humanity's survival. The demon Surgat asks Nimdok for the destruction disc. After being refused, he disappears. In his place appear the Russian and Chinese computer entities inside AM. They tell Nimdok how to destroy AM. He must drive AM's ID, ego, and superego to the altar in the correct order. But before doing that, he must first awaken them. Returning to the previous scene, Nimdok arrive at a map with 5 skulls. Pick up the one in the center that represents himself, and it turns into an arm. Interact with the arm, and Nimdok will repent for his past, begging for his people's forgiveness. But for Nimdok, accepting his past and seeking redemption is only the first step. He then touches the barbed wire in front of him and transforms into a virus that gets injected. Choose Gorister and enter a room with 3 cryogenic chambers. Open the 3rd one and you will find his wife, Glynis, inside. Give her Gorister's heart and she will forgive him and comfort him, saying, "It wasn't all your fault. We both made mistakes." After receiving his wife's forgiveness, the red light on the button turns off and Gorister can then transform into a virus and be injected into AM. Choose Benny and activate the computer in this room. You will see a hologram of his wife from over 100 years ago. Give her a piece of fruit and it turns into a flower. Surprised, the wife says, "This is the first time Benny has ever shown me love. I will treasure this flower." After showing his love, the nearby pillar blooms with flowers. Click the pillar to let Benny transform into a virus and be injected into AM. Choose Ted and enter a room filled with countless long swords and 2 statues. Click the statue on the left, and a pillar full of swords will rise in the center. The statue will show you a sword embedded in stone. Anyone who can pull it out is the king, but all the swords are inserted upside down. A laser will attack anyone who touches the pillar. Use the blood-stained glass to cast a curse on the statue, which causes the laser to short-circuit. Interact with the pillar to let Ted transform into a virus and be injected. Finally, there is the key character, Ellen. She arrives in a room with yellow pillars and embeds the gemstone into the pillar on the left. The pillar rises, revealing the machinery underneath. She pours the water from the Holy Grail onto the pillar. Ellen reflects and says, "Sweet Jesus, I felt my mind push aside the fear and heat to lower the power controls." After that, Alan shows Benny's doll to AM's ID, and it breaks down. The ID exists to bring pain to humanity, and if all humans are dead, it no longer has a purpose. The way to defeat it is by showing it compassion and letting it realize that its existence is incomplete. Show the forgiveness note to AM's ego, and it becomes deeply shocked. The ego has inflicted immense cruelty on humans, yet humans are still able to forgive its actions. This makes the ego realize that its torment has failed, and everything it has done is meaningless. Show the soul mirror to AM's superego, and it falls into despair. It laments that its power is nothing more than a speck of dust in the universe, and that destruction is inevitable. After gathering these twisted faces together, use the destruction disc on them. The game ends. AM is destroyed, and the protagonists save 750 humans on the moon. This is the only good ending in the entire game. To reach this ending, you must first complete the redemption arcs for all 5 characters, just as in the previous story. These include Nimdok's soul mirror, Gorister's forgiveness note, Benny's compassion doll, Ellen's destruction disc, and Ted's chalk. Even if you have collected all the necessary items, if you proceed to the final confrontation and use only Nimdok to interact with AM's ego, ID, and superego alone, AM will notice. It will then transform Nimdok into a twisted creature with no mouth, unable to die, doomed to experience eternal loneliness and suffering. However, if you have each of the 5 characters click on the skull that represents them during the conversations with the ID, ego, and superego, you will learn that the 750 humans on the moon are already dead. Just as Harlan Ellison once said, "I created it so you could not win it. The only way in which you could win was to play it nobly." If released today, this game would hardly be a beloved title for most players. Its gameplay is tedious, and its visuals are far from beautiful. Yet it has the power to leave every player who finishes it deep in thought. "I have no mouth, and I must scream" attempts to use the interactive nature of video games to explore the darkest corners of human emotion. It reaches the deepest depths of darkness and the brightest heights of insight. The game is filled with symbolic elements, and the entire experience unfolds like a psychological drama that is both absurd and logical. It portrays lives that are both pitiful and hateful, and what you are forced to confront is the most unfathomable ugliness within human nature. The game offers players a wide range of choices, many of which are shockingly cruel. Nimdok's scalpel doesn't have to be used to kill the doctor, it can be used to dissect a young boy instead. Gorister can kill his father-in-law and mother-in-law and take out their hearts. Ted can choose to sleep with the maid, indulging in pleasure rather than saving Ellen. The original novel I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream was born in 1967. At that time, electronic computers were nothing more than cold machines used during the Cold War. They were mechanical demons similar to Hitler. What Harlan expressed in his 1967 story was mostly a strong pessimism toward modern technology. But 30 years later, a group of young people who spent their youth on keyboards found him and asked to rebuild the story based on his work. Harlan Ellison, who was still using an old-fashioned typewriter to type bytes even in his later years, eventually decided to shift the focus of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream toward the struggles within the human heart and the search for redemption. He personally wrote more than 170 pages of script. He turned the original short story, in which 5 people went on an adventure together, into a novella. He detailed the background stories and motivations of each character, and he voiced AM himself. In fact, the way to finish the game is not by defeating AM, but by defeating your own past. 5 twisted souls kill the demons in their hearts. AM is a machine. Its world is made only of zeros and ones. It never believes that humans would make different choices from what they did back then. Humans have emotions, desires, and thoughts. They think about the meaning of their lives. AM does not have such complex emotions. It hates humans and takes pleasure in torturing its slaves. It starts the game again and again, constantly trying to push human despair to a new level. But in truth, it is more desperate than anyone. It can think, it can scream, but it cannot appreciate the beauty of the world. It cannot touch its own true existence. It is the crystallization of madness, a monster trapped inside its own body. It wants to keep humans living forever in the abyss of despair. But humans can find redemption. They can escape the abyss. They can create new life through remorse. AM cannot. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a Pandora's box that Harlan Ellison opened with his own hands. Unfortunately, no one was able to continue the story afterward. No one expected that it would become the final work of Cyberdreams. The company shut down and Harlan Ellison passed away in 2018. But the game remains. It became the best gift they left behind for this world. If you enjoyed my video, please give it a like. If you also enjoy this kind of game commentary, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I will keep updating with more content.